love a good multiplayer game. I play games like Fortnite and Call of Duty all the time, and although I'm terrible at them, I still have a ton of fun playing them. Those two franchises are some of the biggest in gaming, and their influence on the industry as a whole is undeniable. As much as you might hate Fortnite, it's hard to deny that it's one of the most influential video games of all time. But that popularity and influence hasn't always had a good effect on the video game industry. In fact, I'd even say that the shockwaves they sent through the medium resulted in some of the biggest gaming disasters of the decade. Microtransactions and always online requirements are no longer rare, but they're actually somewhat common, even in single-player games. More and more games are being launched with hardly enough content, only for the game to be finished over the next few months via free updates. And with the wild success of games like Fortnite, it seems like virtually every publisher wants a live service game of their own to compete, which has led to a market oversaturated with mediocre live service games. Even now, it still feels like live services are the priority to most publishers. It's sad that people applaud when publishers announce that games won't have microtransactions. That's something that should be expected, not something that warrants applause. How did things even get this bad though? Why are so many publishers pumping out live services, expecting us to grub on whatever slop they throw at us? Personally, I think it all started with the success of Fortnite. When Fortnite first launched, it became a sensation. Everybody I knew had heard of it, even my grandma, and almost all of my friends were playing it. Every day, my friends and I would hop into an Xbox Live party and we'd play Fortnite for hours on end. It was so much fun. We could easily sink hours and hours into the game without ever losing interest. The Battle Royale concept was so addictive, and the challenges constantly being released to help us progress through the Battle Pass had us coming back every week. Fortnite was the first game I ever saw that had live events to tune into, and it was mind-blowing. The collaborations with big franchises like Marvel and Star Wars were really cool, and they inspired me to actually buy skins a handful of times, which says a lot, because I usually don't care very much about cosmetics in video games. Hands down though, the biggest factor that contributed to Fortnite's success at first was its constant stream of new game modes and changes to the existing one. The Battle Royale had its own storyline that was being added to with every new season. With each new season, new guns were added and old ones were removed. Certain locations on the map would be replaced with brand new ones, and sometimes we'd even get brand new modes like Playground or Creative. There was always something new being added to the game, so even if you decided to take a break from Fortnite, you'd likely find yourself playing it again in a few months. The wild success of Fortnite inspired plenty of battle royales like The Culling 2, Radical Heights, and Hyperscape, but those games all died out because they simply couldn't replicate the success that Fortnite had. Other live service games were also released, but still, none of them could reach the heights that Fortnite did. Call of Duty Warzone and Apex Legends are some of the biggest games that were released as Fortnite competitors, but at least in my opinion, they just aren't as good. As with any live service though, Fortnite was starting to lose its popularity, but then the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, everybody was forced inside, and with not much else to do, people started playing video games in record numbers. The video game industry exploded, and plenty of investors were pouring money into it because of how fast it was growing. With friends and family not being able to hang out in person, many people resorted to socializing through online multiplayer games, leading to a huge spike in popularity for live service games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, and Call of Duty. Multiplayer games were exploding online, with Fall Guys and Among Us becoming viral sensations during the pandemic. Plenty of big publishers saw this new wave of success for live service games and thought that they could replicate that. In the last few years, a ton of live service games have been released. Too many, in fact, but most of them haven't been very good. The pattern usually goes with a game being released, it explodes in popularity for about a week or two, then the game dies down, and eventually, people move on and forget about it. Even if the game stays relevant for longer than a week or two, it's not very long before its popularity eventually fades away. It's been disappointing to see so many developers pump out live service games instead of the regular ones that they're known for. One great example of this is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The team behind it, Rocksteady, is the same team behind the legendary Batman Arkham games. Instead of greenlighting a new Batman Arkham game though, Warner Brothers made Rocksteady develop a live service game, which ended up becoming Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The game did not review very well. It's currently sitting at a 60 on Metacritic. The game's story was not received very well, especially by fans of the Batman Arkham games, and the gameplay didn't do much to help things out either. The game didn't do very much to make the different characters stand out or feel unique to play, but instead, it seems like there were only different character options there to make it seem as if the game had more content. There were seasons that came after launch that added new characters to the game, but by the time those characters were released, it was too little too late. The game was also full of mundane and boring missions, with much of the game's time being spent grinding through repetitive tasks. Lots of live service games end up feeling like a second job. Live service games require a huge amount of dedication if you want to get the most out of the money that you spent. If you want to experience everything that a live service game has to offer, you pretty much have to give up on any other live service game, sometimes even any other game, period, because you simply won't have the time for them. That's another big issue that these publishers are starting to face. Even if the live service game that they put out is good, is it better than everything else that's out there? Is it more unique than everything else that's out there? Is it so good that players will drop all their other live service games just to grind that one instead? Needless to say, the fans were not happy with Kill the Justice League, and rightfully so. The Batman Arkham games are amazing single-player experiences, so why would Warner Brothers make a live service game and direct it towards fans of the Batman Arkham games? Warner Brothers denied Rocksteady their true potential, so instead of making another amazing single-player experience, they were forced to make slop that was meant to make Warner Brothers some extra cash and nothing more. As a result of the failure of Kill the Justice League, plenty of developers were laid off from Rocksteady, which I think is criminal. These developers simply did what the higher-ups told them to do, and now they have to suffer the consequences of their boss's failures? That's not fair at all. All that talent is going down the drain, talent that easily could have made a Game of the Year contender if Warner Brothers had simply let them. This isn't the only instance of live service games failing like that either. Plenty of live service games suffer from mediocre gameplay and a lack of quality content. Companies will usually throw out some new cosmetics or something and call it a day, when in reality, that's not what the game needs. The game needs higher quality content and higher quality gameplay. Publishers will prioritize live services over single-player experiences, and just looking by what's happened in the industry over the last handful of years, that almost never ends well. A similar situation is the recent flop of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. There originally wasn't even supposed to be a new Call of Duty game in 2023. It was supposed to be a DLC pack for Modern Warfare 2. Activision wanted to pump out a new game to milk the franchise and push Warzone though, so they made Sledgehammer Games take the DLC pack that they were working on and turn it into a full-fledged release at the last minute. Naturally, Modern Warfare 3 did not review well. It's sitting at a 56 on Metacritic right now, and rightfully so. Modern Warfare 3 had an extremely rushed campaign that simply was not worth $70. Ever since Warzone came out, each new Call of Duty entry has felt more and more like a Warzone spin-off, even though Warzone is the actual spin-off. It sucks to see all these microtransactions and cosmetics advertised whenever I look at a new Call of Duty game or update. I don't care about what new skins they're adding, I care about the gameplay. If Activision put more resources towards shaking up and improving the gameplay of each new Call of Duty game, they'd get much better reviews every year. It looks like that's kinda what they're doing with Black Ops 6, so fingers crossed that the gameplay is actually improved and Activision put less of an emphasis on microtransactions and stuff, but after the last handful of Call of Duty releases, I'm not holding my breath. That problem isn't exclusive to live services either. Although microtransactions started out primarily in mobile games or live services, they've branched out to single-player games, and I think that's straight up pathetic. I'm trying to make my way through the story, dude. I'm not gonna pay $5 for a skin for my characters. I just don't care. I'd much rather earn that skin by progressing through the game than just spending money on it. When I buy a game, I want to know that the game is as complete as possible. But since microtransactions are so lucrative in live service games, publishers have started to infect single-player games with them too. That's not the only problem to affect other types of games. Multiplayer games that I wouldn't outright call live services tend to launch without nearly as much content as they should. Even single-player games have that problem. Plenty of Mario sports games will launch severely lacking in content, with the game being completed via free updates. I shouldn't have to wait for free updates, I should get the complete package at launch. I don't mind a game getting free updates after it launches, but if it's obvious that those free updates are meant to fill gaping holes in the game and nothing more, I'm not gonna be happy. Not all live services are terrible though, but sadly, even the good ones don't always last for very long. Knockout City was a multiplayer game that was essentially a fusion between a third-person shooter and dodgeball. It was a unique idea that was loads of fun to play. It started out as a paid release, but eventually eventually it went free to play. I played it all the time with my friends, but no matter how much we played it, it wasn't enough to save the game. Knockout City served as a reminder of the cost of game development, and that even if a game is really good, it likely won't be able to make up for the cost of development and maintaining the servers for online play. Another extremely common consequence of live service games not performing as well as publishers hoped they would is hitting the studio that develops the game with layoffs. It's what happens to Rocksteady, and sadly, it's what's happening to many other studios as well. Layoffs have become frighteningly common in the gaming industry nowadays, with news of a huge wave of layoffs coming pretty much every other week. Although not every single wave of layoffs is because of a live service game, an alarming amount of them are. Microsoft laid off lots of employees from 343 Industries after the poor performance of Halo Infinite's multiplayer mode. Bungie suffered multiple rounds of layoffs after being bought by Sony. The increase in the cost of game development isn't helping things whatsoever. Nowadays, games are taking longer and longer to develop, as well as costing much more. With many more game development tools being released now than ever, and with them being the most accessible they've ever been, you'd think that game development would be cheaper and faster than ever before, but that just isn't the case. When developers put so many of their resources towards live services, they're making a dangerous gamble, because the risk is much greater than the reward. Chances are that the live service game that these publishers are devoting all of their resources towards will not make up all of the costs of development. The recent failure of Concord is the perfect example of just how badly things can work out for a live service. Sony is known for putting out cinematic, high-quality single-player experiences, so their push for more live service games has been pretty concerning. Although Sony has kind of backed off from their big live service push, still, they're putting way too many eggs in that basket. When Concord was announced at the State of Play in June, the fans were not happy, and I wasn't either. Concord was another generic-looking hero shooter in an already oversaturated genre. 8 years of development and millions of dollars culminated in a launch so bad that the game was shut down in 2 weeks. All those resources could have gone towards bringing back beloved PlayStation franchises that have been dormant for a while, but instead, those resources were thrown away on a game that died faster than a housefly. This isn't to say that no live services can succeed, though. Although Concord may have crashed and burned, Helldivers 2, another live service game from Sony, was a massive hit in the beginning of 2024. It did everything that a live service needs to. It has good gameplay, a sufficient amount of content at launch, and it's always being updated to keep people coming back. The dynamic story kept people invested, and the sense of community that the game created made people feel like they were actually a part of this grand galactic war. The best example of a live service game done right, though, is Fortnite. I went into such detail about it earlier in the video because I believe that Fortnite is a shining example of what a live service game should be. The game has plenty of cool cosmetics, yeah, but they're not meant to be a replacement for good gameplay. They're merely a supplement to it. The game is always getting new content, with much of that content being new modes and changes to the map, but that isn't to say that the game launched without a sufficient amount of content. Epic Games is always making huge and crazy updates for Fortnite. Every year, there's some sort of wild Fortnite update that blows up the game's player count and has the game trending online. The game's use of live events creates so much hype around each new season. The Travis Scott concert was a groundbreaking experience that was a lot of fun to play through. I don't even listen to Travis Scott, and I had a blast. My friends always come back to Fortnite though, especially for the events, since we know that Epic Games has something fun in store with every new event. Even outside of live events, their updates are always shaking up the game in a crazy way without entirely killing off its identity. The OG update was a huge nostalgia trip that reunited my squad from 2018, and to this day, I still can't believe that there's actually a Guitar Hero mode in Fortnite. So overall, I don't think that every single live service game is an abomination, but it's impossible to deny the damage that they've done to the industry. Sure, not every single game that's released in the last handful of years has been a live service game, but we've still gotten way too many of them. So many people have lost their jobs, so much money has been wasted, and so much potential has been thrown in the trash. These live service games need to be better. Publishers are losing sight of what makes live service games so successful in the first place. They think that they can simply pump one out and it'll instantly become this viral hit. They're forgetting that what makes live services so much fun to play in the long run is that they're constantly being updated and there's always something new to play. It's not just the cosmetics that make them fun, it's the gameplay that makes the games fun. These publishers need to make games that the fans really want because the fans are the ones keeping them in business. And if these publishers do end up making a live service game anyway, at the very least, do it right. Cosmetics aren't everything, and just because I can grind a mission over and over again doesn't mean that I actually want to. With the recent failures of games like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and Concord, I'm hoping that publishers are starting to get the hint. They really need to lay off of the live service trend and make something the fans will actually enjoy. The gaming industry as a whole has suffered because of live services, and until publishers finally realize that, it isn't going to get any better.